The Valorian auction house floated in the darkness of space like a massive jewel. Inside its gleaming halls, thousands of alien species gathered for the most important event of the season. They came from every corner of the galaxy to buy war horses, the legendary creatures that made empires rise and fall. The air buzzed with excitement and the strange sounds of 100 different languages mixing together. Hannah stood in the back of the auction hall, trying to make herself invisible. She wore her dirty maintenance uniform, still stained with grease from fixing a cooling system earlier that day. Around her, wealthy aliens dressed in expensive armor and flowing robes laughed and made deals worth more money than she would see in her entire life. She did not belong here, and everyone knew it. The auctioneer, a tall being with 4 arms and purple skin, gestured dramatically at the stage. Behind him, magnificent war horses stood in display pens. Each creature was more impressive than the last. One had scales that shimmered like diamonds. Another had muscles that rippled with barely contained power. The crowd gasped and cheered as each animal was presented. War horses were not normal animals. Scientists had created them centuries ago, mixing genes from dozens of species to build the perfect battle companion. They could run faster than vehicles, fight with the intelligence of trained soldiers, and bond with their riders through a telepathic connection. A good warhorse could turn a normal soldier into a legend. A great warhorse could change the outcome of entire wars. The bidding was fierce. Alien generals and mercenary lords raised their hands, shouting numbers that made Hannah's head spin. One warhorse sold for enough money to buy a small spaceship. Another went for the price of a colony habitat. The crowd roared with each sale, proud to witness such power-changing hands. Then everything changed. The auctioneer's voice dropped from excited to annoyed. And now lot number 47. He did not even try to sound enthusiastic. A small warhorse was led onto the stage. He was smaller than the others, with a dull gray coat that looked almost dirty compared to the gleaming specimens that came before. His legs trembled as he walked. His head hung low. Where the other war horses had strutted with confidence, this one seemed to wish he could disappear. "This is Taeyang," the auctioneer said flatly. "From the Crimson Star bloodline. Age 3 years," the crowd murmured. The Crimson Star bloodline was famous. War horses from that line had carried emperors and won legendary battles. Everyone leaned forward, expecting to see hidden potential. They saw nothing but disappointment. Taeyang's ribs showed through his coat. His eyes were wide and frightened, darting around the crowd like a trapped animal. When the handler yanked his lead rope, the warhorse flinched and stumbled. Someone in the crowd laughed. Then more joined in. "What happened to this one?" called out a reptilian general with scales that gleamed like metal. "Did they forget to feed him? Or is he just broken?" The auctioneer's face turned darker purple, embarrassed. "The creature shows no combat aptitude. Trainers report he freezes during drills and refuses commands. He will not bond properly." An insectoid warlord clicked her mandibles in disgust. "Defective. Should have been destroyed already. Why waste our time?" More laughter rippled through the crowd. On the stage, Taeyang's whole body shook. His ears pinned flat against his head. In his eyes, Hannah saw something that made her chest hurt. It was not stupidity or weakness. It was pure terror. She knew that look. She had seen it in the mirror back when she was 14. Newly orphaned after her colony was attacked, she remembered how the evacuation ship's crew had looked at her like she was just another burden, how they talked about her like she could not hear them, deciding she was probably too traumatized to be useful for anything. "Let us start the bidding at 5,000 credits, the auctioneer said without enthusiasm. Silence filled the hall. 4,000? The auctioneer tried. Nothing. Some aliens had already turned away, talking amongst themselves about more interesting purchases. 2,000 credits. Surely someone needs a training dummy, perhaps? Cruel laughter answered him. Taeyang's legs nearly gave out. A handler grabbed him roughly to keep him standing. 1,000 credits, and I will throw in a training collar for free. Still nothing. The auctioneer sighed heavily. Very well. This lot is declared unsold. The creature will be processed for termination according to standard protocols. 2 handlers moved forward to lead Taeyang away. The warhorse did not fight. He just dropped his head lower and followed, defeated. In 3 days, he would be destroyed. That was what happened to failed warhorses. They were too expensive to keep alive if they could not fight. Hannah's hand shot up before her brain could stop her. 500 credits. The entire hall went silent. Thousands of alien eyes turned to look at her. The auctioneer's forearms froze in mid-gesture. I am sorry, what? He said. Hana's voice shook, but she said it again louder. 500 credits. I bid 500 credits. The crowd erupted in laughter. It was even worse than the laughter aimed at Taiyang. These were not just chuckles, but full belly laughs that echoed off the crystal walls. Aliens pointed at her. Some slapped their knees or whatever body parts they used to show amusement. The cleaning girl wants to buy a war horse. Someone shouted. What will she do, have it mop floors? Maybe she wants a very expensive pet. The auctioneer looked like he wanted to refuse, but auction rules were strict. Any bid was legal. His purple skin flushed darker with embarrassment at the mockery his auction had become. 500 credits is insulting, he said, but technically acceptable. Does anyone wish to counterbid? The laughter continued, but no one raised their hand. No one wanted to be the person who fought a maintenance worker over a defective warhorse. 500 once. 500 twice. The auctioneer banged his gavel quickly, wanting this disaster to end. Sold to the human in the back. More laughter. Hana felt her face burn red, but she pushed through the crowd toward the payment station. Her hands shook as she transferred every credit she had saved over the past year. She had been saving to buy a ticket off this station, to go somewhere better. Now that dream was gone, traded for a creature everyone said was worthless. The handler brought Taiyang to her, barely hiding his smirk. Good luck with this one. You will need it. Up close, Taiyang looked even worse. His coat was rough and patchy. Scars marked his legs from harsh training. But when their eyes met, something passed between them. Taiyang stopped trembling for just a moment. His expression changed from pure terror to confusion, like he could not understand why anyone would choose him. Hana reached out slowly and touched his neck. His skin was warm under her fingers. He did not pull away. It is okay, she whispered. I see you. Around them, the auction continued. Other magnificent war horses were sold to powerful warriors. Fortunes changed hands. Legends were born. No one noticed the small human girl leading a broken warhorse out of the hall. No one cared. They would. Eventually, everyone would know the names Hana and Taiyang. But that story was still waiting to be written, one careful step at a time. Hana's quarters were barely large enough for one person, let alone a warhorse. The room measured 3 meters by 4 meters with a narrow bed, a small desk, and a bathroom the size of a closet. Station regulations said absolutely nothing about keeping large animals in crew housing, probably because no one imagined someone would be stupid enough to try. Taiyang stood in the middle of the cramped space, looking more lost than ever. His gray coat seemed to absorb the dim light, making him look like a ghost. Hana had spread every blanket she owned on the floor to make him comfortable, but he refused to lie down. He just stood there, trembling and staring at nothing. You must be hungry, Hana said softly. She opened the packet of nutrition pellets the handler had thrown at her with a sneer. They looked like brown rocks and smelled like chemicals. When she held one out to Taiyang, he turned his head away. Please eat something, Hana tried again. Taiyang's ears flattened. He took a step backward, pressing himself against the wall. Hana sat down on the floor, making herself small. She had read somewhere that predators stood tall while prey crouched low. Maybe if she did not loom over him, he would feel safer. She placed the pellet on the floor and pushed it toward him. I am not going to hurt you. I promise. Taiyang stared at the pellet like it might explode. His whole body was tense, ready to bolt even though there was nowhere to run. Hours passed. Hana talked quietly about nothing important, just filling the silence with a calm voice. She told him about growing up on a colony world where her parents had grown real food in greenhouses. She talked about the attack that destroyed her home, how she ended up on this station fixing broken things for people who barely noticed she existed. She told him she understood what it felt like to be thrown away. Taiyang did not eat the pellet. Eventually, exhaustion won and Hana fell asleep sitting against her bed. When she woke up hours later, her neck aching from the awkward position, the pellet was gone. Taiyang stood in the exact same spot, but his eyes looked less wild. It was a start. The next day, Hana went to work in the station's maintenance tunnels, crawling through tight spaces to repair air filters and replace worn cables. Her supervisor yelled at her for daydreaming, but she could not stop thinking about Taiyang alone in her quarters. On her lunch break, she used her datapad to search the station's library for information about warhorses. Most of the files were locked behind military clearance she did not have, but she found training manuals that had been declassified, probably because they were old and outdated. She read about the telepathic bond between rider and mount, how it formed through trust and mutual understanding. She read about training techniques that made her stomach turn with anger. The standard method was called pressure braking. Trainers would push warhorses past their mental limits through pain, fear, and exhaustion until the animal's will broke completely. Only then, when the creature was too beaten down to resist, would the bonding process begin. The theory was that a broken warhorse would accept any rider and follow commands without question. It was efficient. It was proven. It was also incredibly cruel. Hana stared at the screen, her hands shaking. No wonder Taeyang was terrified. No wonder he froze and refused to cooperate. He was not stupid or weak. He was traumatized. She thought about her own trauma counselor back on the evacuation ship, how the woman's patience and kindness had slowly helped her function again. She thought about the therapy animals she had read about, how humans on Earth had once used dogs and horses to help people heal. Maybe war horses were not so different from regular horses. Maybe they needed kindness, not cruelty. That night, Hana brought home real food from the station's market. It cost too much, but she did not care. She bought fresh grains and sweet vegetables, the kind of food that regular horses loved according to the old Earth files she found. Taeyang watched her with suspicious eyes as she prepared the food. She set it down and retreated to the far corner of the room, making herself as non-threatening as possible. "No one is going to hurt you anymore," she said quietly. "Not while I am here." This time Taeyang waited only an hour before cautiously approaching the bowl. He sniffed it for a long time, then took a tiny bite. Then another. Within minutes the bowl was empty. When he looked at her again, something had changed in his eyes. The days turned into weeks. Hana established a routine. Every morning before work she would groom Taeyang gently, talking to him the whole time. She discovered that he liked having his ears rubbed and would lean into her touch ever so slightly. Every evening she would bring him the best food she could afford and sit nearby while he ate. Slowly, painfully slowly, Taeyang began to trust her. The real breakthrough came 3 weeks after the auction. Hana had found an abandoned cargo bay that no one used anymore. It was huge and empty, perfect for Taeyang to stretch his legs. She brought him there late at night when the station's corridors were empty. For the first time since she bought him, Taeyang ran. It was not the explosive power she had seen from other war horses. It was hesitant and awkward, like he had forgotten how his own legs worked, but there was joy in it too. He ran in wide circles, his hooves clicking on the metal floor, his tail streaming behind him. When he finally stopped, breathing hard, his eyes were brighter than she had ever seen them. "You are beautiful," Hana said, and meant it. Taeyang walked over to her and, for the first time, pressed his nose against her chest. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. That night, as Hana lay in her narrow bed with Taeyang finally sleeping peacefully on the floor beside her, she felt something strange. It was like a whisper at the edge of her mind, too quiet to understand but impossible to ignore. She closed her eyes and focused on it. Colors bloomed in her thoughts. Not her colors, but Taeyang's. She felt his exhaustion, his confusion, his desperate need to prove he was not worthless. She felt his gratitude that someone finally saw him as more than a failure. The telepathic bond was forming. Hana gasped and opened her eyes. Taeyang had raised his head and was staring at her. Through the fragile connection, she felt his shock matching her own. "I can feel you," she whispered. Through the bond, she sensed his response. Not words exactly, but emotions and impressions that her mind translated into understanding. He could feel her too. For the first time in his life, he was not alone in his own head. Tears ran down Hana's face. She got up and knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around his neck. Taeyang pressed against her, and through the bond she felt something she had not expected. Taeyang was not weak. He was not stupid. Under the trauma and fear lived a mind that was sharp and quick and desperately eager to learn. The alien trainers had broken him because he was too intelligent, too sensitive to respond to their brutal methods. They had called him defective because he did not fit their mold. But Hana saw what they missed. Taeyang did not need to be broken. He needed to be understood. The next morning, Hana called in sick to work for the first time ever. She spent the entire day in the cargo bay with Taeyang, not training but playing. She set up obstacles for him to explore. She encouraged him when he succeeded and comforted him when he was afraid. Through the bond, she could feel his confidence growing. They were building something new together, not the forced obedience of a broken animal, but a true partnership between equals. Everything changed 3 weeks later when a station security officer appeared at her door with a formal notice. Someone had reported her for keeping an unauthorized animal in crew quarters. She had 30 days to remove Taeyang from the station, or he would be confiscated and destroyed. Hana stared at the notice, her heart pounding. Through the bond, she felt Taeyang's fear spiking in response to her emotions. There was only one way to save him. The frontier trials were starting in 28 days on Korgath Prime. If she could enter and prove Taeyang was a legitimate warhorse, the station would have to recognize him. They would have to let him stay. It was insane. The trials were brutal. Competitors died. She was just a maintenance worker with no combat training. Taeyang was still recovering from trauma, but it was their only chance. Hana looked at Taeyang and felt his determination through the bond. He was not going to give up. Neither would she. "Okay," she said out loud. "We do this together." Korgath Prime was a nightmare planet that smelled like sulfur and death. The transport ship landed on a flat stretch of black rock surrounded by toxic swamps that bubbled with acidic vapor. In the distance, crystal formations jutted from the ground like broken teeth, catching the light from the system's twin suns and throwing rainbow reflections across the hostile landscape. Hana stood at the bottom of the transport ramp, trying not to throw up from nervousness. Beside her, Taeyang trembled but held his head high. The bond between them hummed with shared anxiety and determination. They had spent every free moment of the past month preparing, but now that they were actually here, the reality felt overwhelming. "Move aside, maintenance girl." A massive figure pushed past her, nearly knocking her down. The man was easily 2 meters tall, built like a stone wall with scars covering his arms and face. His warhorse was jet black with eyes that glowed red. The creature radiated menace, snorting and pawing at the ground like it wanted to fight everything in sight. The man looked back at Hana with something like pity. "I am Minho, been doing the trials for 5 years. Some advice? Go home before you get killed. This is not a place for amateurs." He walked away before she could respond. Other competitors filed past, each with their own magnificent warhorse. A female rider with ice blue hair led a warhorse that seemed to shimmer like liquid metal. An alien with 4 legs of its own rode a warhorse with armored scales. They all looked at Hana the same way, a mixture of confusion and contempt. The only human who did not seem surprised to see her was a woman about Hana's age, dressed in expensive armor with a mercenary company logo on her shoulder. Her warhorse was sleek silver with an intelligent face in perfect proportions. "Ji-won?" The woman introduced herself coldly. "You are the one from the auction house story. Everyone heard about the maintenance girl who bought the reject." Hana felt her face flush. "His name is Taeyang." Ji-won looked at Taeyang with the expression someone might use when examining spoiled food. "How much did you pay for him?" "Couple hundred credits?" She laughed. "My mount cost 200,000. You get what you pay for in this business." She walked away, her perfect warhorse stepping with calculated grace. Through the bond, Hana felt Taeyang's hurt and shame. She put her hand on his neck. "She is wrong," Hana said quietly. "Your worth is not measured in credits." The opening ceremony took place in a natural amphitheater formed by collapsed lava tubes. Thousands of spectators filled the stands, having traveled across the galaxy to watch the frontier trials. This was not just a competition, but entertainment, broadcast to billions of viewers on hundreds of worlds. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena, translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "Welcome to the frontier trials. For the next 5 days, 50 teams will compete across Korgath Prime's deadliest terrain. Only the strong will survive. Only the best will claim glory." The crowd roared. Hana felt sick. "Your first challenge begins at dawn. Navigate the acid swamps and retrieve 5 relay markers. The markers are scattered across 10 kilometers of toxic wasteland filled with predators. Teams that fail to retrieve all 5 markers are eliminated. Teams that lose their rider or mount are eliminated. Teams that do not return within 6 hours are eliminated. 6 hours to cross 10 kilometers of deadly swamp while fighting monsters and searching for hidden markers." Hana had never fought anything more dangerous than a stuck door. That night in the competitor camps, Hana could not sleep. She sat beside Taeyang under the strange alien stars, brushing his coat and trying to calm her racing thoughts. Through the bond, she felt his fear matching hers, but underneath it was something else. Determination, trust. He believed in her, even if no one else did. "We do not have to be the strongest," she whispered to him. "We just have to be smart." Dawn came too quickly. 50 teams assembled at the edge of the swamp. The surface bubbled with toxic gas and things moved under the murky water. The relay markers would be on small islands scattered throughout, each one barely large enough for a warhorse to stand on. The starting horn blared. Chaos erupted immediately. Warhorses charged into the swamp, some trying to power through the shallow water, others leaping from solid ground to solid ground. Within minutes, the first screams echoed across the swamp as something grabbed a warhorse from below and dragged it under. The rider barely escaped, swimming desperately for shore while his mount thrashed and disappeared beneath the acid water. Hana and Taeyang hung back, watching and learning. She noticed that the larger warhorses, the ones built for power, were struggling. Their weight made them sink into the soft mud. The creatures lurking in the water targeted them because they could not move quickly. "There," Hana said, pointing to a path of floating vegetation. "Those plants, they look thick enough to hold us." Taeyang was smaller and lighter than most warhorses. What everyone had mocked as weakness might actually be an advantage here. They moved carefully onto the floating mat of vegetation. It sank slightly under Taeyang's weight but held. Other teams had not even considered this route, assuming anything floating would not support a warhorse. But Taeyang was different. They found their first marker on an island that larger teams had bypassed because the gap to reach it seemed too wide to jump. Taeyang made the leap easily, his lighter build giving him more agility. Through the bond, Hana felt his growing confidence. The second and third markers were harder. Predators attacked, rising from the water with massive jaws. Taeyang danced away from them, using speed instead of trying to fight. Hana guided him through the bond, seeing the battlefield from above in her mind and warning him of danger before he saw it himself. By the fourth marker, they had developed a rhythm. Hana's mind and Taeyang's body worked as one. They did not fight the swamp, but flowed through it, adapting to each challenge. The final marker sat on an island in the center of the deadliest section of swamp. Several teams were already there, fighting over it. Minho and his black warhorse battled against two alien teams, warhorses clashing in displays of raw power. Hana looked for another way. She spotted a series of sunken stones just below the water's surface, invisible unless you knew where to look. "Can you feel those?" she asked through the bond. Taeyang tested the first stone with his hoof. It held. He moved to the next, then the next, stepping carefully while the other teams were distracted by their battle. They reached the island from an unexpected angle, grabbed the marker and were gone before anyone noticed them. Behind them, the other teams continued fighting while Hana and Taeyang headed for the finish line. They were not the first team to finish. That honor went to Jiwon and her silver warhorse, who had powered through with brutal efficiency. But Hana and Taeyang finished 7th out of 50 teams, far better than anyone expected. More importantly, they were not injured. Many teams that finished ahead of them had wounded mounts or riders. Several teams did not finish at all. As Hana dismounted and hugged Taeyang's neck, she heard murmurs from the crowd. Not laughter this time, but confused speculation. How had the weakest team survived? Minho approached, his black warhorse limping slightly from the battle on the island. He looked at Taeyang with new eyes. "Smart," he said simply. "You did not try to be something you are not. You used what you had." It was the first real compliment they had received. Through the bond, Hana felt Taeyang's pride mixing with her own. The second challenge came the next day. The Crystal Canyon was a nightmare of sound and confusion. Crystal formations throughout the canyon created sonic distortions that disoriented warhorses. Most riders relied on their mounts' natural instincts, but those instincts failed in the canyon. The starting horn sounded and teams charged into the canyon. Within minutes, warhorses were slamming into walls, their senses completely scrambled by the sonic chaos. Riders shouted commands that their mounts could not hear. Some teams turned back, eliminated by their own confusion, but Hana had a weapon that other riders did not. The telepathic bond. The sonic distortions could not affect the connection between her mind and Taeyang's. While other riders shouted uselessly at their panicking mounts, Hana guided Taeyang through pure thought. She became his senses, directing him step by step through the maze. It was exhausting. Maintaining that level of connection while also navigating the twisting canyon drained her completely. But Taeyang trusted her absolutely, following her mental guidance even when his own senses screamed danger. They emerged from the canyon in 4th place. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. This was not luck anymore. The maintenance girl and her reject warhorse were genuinely competing. That night, Jiwon confronted Hana at the water station. "What trick are you using? Some kind of illegal enhancement?" Hana looked at her steadily. "No tricks. Just trust." Jiwon's eyes narrowed. "Trust does not win wars. Power does. You will learn that tomorrow." She walked away, but Hana noticed something through her bond with Taeyang. He had sensed Jiwon's warhorse nearby, and the other creature's thoughts were wrong somehow, not natural. There was anger there and pain and something that felt like chemical fire in its mind. Hana pushed the worry aside. They had 3 more challenges ahead, each more dangerous than the last. All they could do was face them together and hope it would be enough. The predator jungle made the swamps and canyons look friendly by comparison. Trees with black bark stretched toward the sky, their leaves creating a canopy so thick that barely any light reached the ground. Strange sounds echoed through the darkness, howls and clicks and scraping noises that made every nerve in Hana's body scream for her to run. The challenge was simple in theory. Survive 1 night in the jungle while protecting a beacon. Each team received a small device that emitted a constant signal. Predators in the jungle were attracted to electronic signals. Keep your beacon safe until dawn, and you advance to the next round. Lose your beacon or your life, and you were eliminated. 20 teams remained. Half of the original competitors had already been eliminated or withdrawn due to injuries. The ones who were left were the best, the most experienced, the most dangerous. And somehow Hana and Taeyang were among them. "Stay together," the lead judge announced. "Travel in groups if you wish or go alone. But remember, only teams with their beacons intact will continue. Some of you will not see dawn." The teams dispersed into the jungle as the twin suns set. Hana noticed that most riders were forming alliances, grouping up for safety, but no one invited her to join them. Minho gave her a nod of respect but went with a pair of alien warriors he had worked with before. Jiwon disappeared into the darkness alone, confident in her mount's superiority. Hana and Taeyang were alone. Through the bond, Hana felt Taeyang's heightened senses coming alive. His ears swiveled constantly, catching sounds she could not hear. His nostrils flared, processing scents that told him stories about what moved through the jungle. He was built for this, she realized. All warhorses were. The question was whether she could support him well enough to survive. They found a small clearing near a cluster of ancient trees with thick roots. It was not perfect, but it offered some protection and visibility. Hana secured the beacon to Taeyang's saddle and checked her knife, the only weapon she had. "We do not fight unless we have to," she whispered. "We hide, we wait, and we survive." Taeyang agreed through the bond. He was afraid but steady, drawing strength from her presence the same way she drew courage from him. The first hour passed quietly. Then the sounds began. Something massive moved through the jungle, snapping branches that were thicker than Hana's leg. Other teams had set up camp in that direction. Suddenly there were shouts and the distinctive sound of a warhorse's battle cry. Lights flashed through the trees, probably weapons fire. The screaming started and ended quickly. Through the jungle, Hana heard the lead judge's voice broadcast from speakers. "Team 17 eliminated. Team 23 eliminated. 2 teams gone in minutes. 18 teams left." Taeyang tensed, every muscle ready to run. But Hana kept her hand on his neck, sending calming thoughts through the bond. Running would make noise. Noise would draw attention. Better to stay still and silent. More sounds came from different directions. Predators were circling, testing the teams, looking for weakness. The jungle was alive with death. Then Hana heard something that made her blood run cold. A child's voice crying in the darkness. "Help! Someone please help!" Taeyang's ears pinned back. Through the bond, he sent her a warning. It was not a child. It was something mimicking human speech, using the sounds as bait. But then another voice joined the first. "The beacon! I dropped the beacon." That voice was real. Hana could hear the genuine panic in it. Through the trees, she saw lights moving frantically. A team was in trouble. A young alien rider, barely older than Hana herself, separated from their warhorse. The predator that had been mimicking a child's voice emerged from the shadows. It was a nightmare creature, all teeth and claws and hunger. The smart thing to do was stay hidden, let nature take its course. One less competitor to worry about. Hana found herself moving before she made the conscious decision. Taeyang did not hesitate. Through the bond, she felt his agreement. They were not going to let someone die if they could prevent it. They burst from hiding, Taeyang moving like gray lightning through the darkness. The predator turned, surprised by the sudden attack. Hana did not try to fight it directly. Instead, she grabbed a dead branch and set it on fire using the emergency flare from her supply pack. The creature hissed and backed away from the flames. Fire was a universal language in the animal kingdom. It meant danger. "Get your beacon and mount up," Hana shouted at the other rider. The alien scrambled to obey, finding their dropped beacon and whistling for their warhorse. The creature emerged from the shadows and the team fled into the jungle together. They did not thank her. They were too terrified. But Hana did not care. She and Taiyang had done the right thing. The problem was that they had revealed their position. More predators were coming, drawn by the noise and the fire. Hana threw the burning branch aside and guided Taiyang into motion. They could not stay in one place anymore. They had to keep moving, keep ahead of the hunters. For hours they danced through the darkness. Taiyang's superior senses warned them of danger before Hana could see it. Her tactical mind planned routes and escape paths through the bond. Together, they were something greater than either could be alone. Just before dawn, they heard another team in trouble. This time it was Minho. His black warhorse had stepped into some kind of trap. Its leg caught in a vine that tightened the more it struggled. Two predators circled, waiting for their moment to strike. Minho fought them with a plasma blade, keeping them at bay, but he was tiring. His warhorse was panicking, making the trap worse. Again, Hana did not hesitate. She and Taiyang approached from an angle the predators were not watching. While Hana cut the vine with her knife, Taiyang positioned himself between the predators and the trapped warhorse. The predators charged. Taiyang did not try to fight them head-on. Instead, he danced away, leading them in circles, keeping them focused on him while Hana freed Minho's mount. "Got it," Hana shouted. Minho's warhorse surged free and the big man mounted quickly. Together, the two teams drove the predators back and escaped into the lightning jungle. When they reached safety, Minho looked at Hana with complete respect. "You saved my life, why?" Hana shrugged, exhausted. "Because it was right." Minho shook his head in amazement. "Most riders here would have let me die." "One less competitor." He extended his hand. "I owe you a debt. If you need anything in the next challenges, you call on me." Dawn broke across the jungle. Of the 20 teams that entered, only 14 emerged with their beacons intact. Hana and Taeyang were among them. So was the young alien they had saved, and Minho. Jiwon was there too, her silver warhorse unmarked and perfect. But there was something wrong in the creature's eyes. Something that made Hana's stomach twist when she looked at it too long. The fourth challenge was announced that afternoon. The siege. Teams had to defend a small fortress against waves of combat drones. It was a test of tactics, teamwork, and endurance. Most teams prepared by checking their weapons and planning defensive positions. But Hana looked at the fortress differently. It was old, built by whoever had settled Korgath Prime before the planet became too hostile. There were weak points in the walls, places where the stone had crumbled. "We do not defend the walls," she told Taiyang through the bond. "We use them as weapons." When the challenge began, most teams hunkered down and fought wave after wave of drones head-on. It was brutal and exhausting. Warhorses and riders fought with everything they had, but the drones kept coming. Hana and Taiyang took a different approach. They identified the attack patterns, then used Taiyang's speed to lead drones into traps. Weak walls became falling stones that crushed groups of drones. Narrow passages became bottlenecks where the machines jammed themselves. They conserved energy while other teams exhausted themselves. By the final wave, Hana and Taiyang were still fresh while other competitors could barely stand. They finished second, just behind Jiwon, who had fought with cold efficiency. But everyone noticed that Hana and Taiyang had taken almost no damage while other teams were battered and bloodied. That evening, the judges made an announcement. The final challenge will be different this year. Instead of another survival test, we will hold a tournament. Team against team, in single combat. The winner claims the title of Apex Rider. The crowd roared its approval. This was what they had come to see. Actual combat between the best riders and mounts in the galaxy. Hana felt sick. She had avoided direct confrontation throughout the trials, using intelligence and cooperation instead of fighting. But there was no avoiding this final test. Through the bond, Taiyang sent her a wave of determination. He was not the same terrified creature from the auction house. He had grown stronger, faster, more confident. And he trusted her completely. They would face this challenge together, like they had faced all the others. That night, Minho approached their camp. You fight smart, Hana, but tomorrow requires more than smart. It requires the will to hurt another living creature. He looked troubled. Can you do that? Hana did not answer immediately. She thought about Taiyang, about how close he had come to being destroyed. She thought about all the rejected and discarded creatures like him, who never got a second chance. I will do what I have to, she said finally. To protect him. Minho nodded slowly. Then I hope we do not face each other in the arena. Because I like you, maintenance girl, and I really do not want to have to beat you. He left, and Hana sat with Taeyang under the stars, preparing for the hardest fight of their lives. The grand arena had been built into a natural crater, with seats carved from black stone rising in tiers around the fighting ground. 50,000 spectators filled the stands, and billions more watched across the galaxy through live broadcasts. The air hummed with excitement and bloodlust. This was what everyone had been waiting for. Hana stood in the preparation area, her hands shaking as she checked Taiyang's saddle for the 10th time. Around her, other competitors prepared their war horses. Some painted ritual symbols on their mounts. Others sharpened weapons or ran through combat drills. Everyone had their own way of dealing with the fear. The tournament bracket was displayed on massive screens. 14 teams had made it to the finals. The matchups were random, drawn by the judges to ensure fairness. Hana scanned the list until she found her name. First round, Hana and Taeyang versus Team 7, an alien pair from a warrior culture. She had seen them fight in the Siege Challenge. They were competent but not exceptional. It was the best first match she could have hoped for. The horn sounded. The first match was beginning. 2 teams entered the arena from opposite sides. The crowd roared. For 5 minutes, Hana watched as war horses and riders clashed in a display of raw power and skill. The fight ended when one warhorse managed to throw its opponent's rider. The moment the rider hit the ground, judges declared the match over. Victory by dismount. The pattern continued through the first several matches. Most ended quickly, one side clearly superior. But when Minho entered the arena, the crowd's energy changed. His black warhorse moved like living shadow, powerful and precise. His opponent never stood a chance. Then it was Hana's turn. She mounted Taiyang, feeling his nervousness through the bond, but also his determination. His gray coat had transformed over the past weeks. It now gleamed like polished steel, and his muscles moved with the grace of water. He looked nothing like the broken creature from the auction house. They entered the arena to mixed reactions. Some in the crowd cheered for the underdog story. Others booed, wanting to see real warriors fight. Hana blocked it all out, focusing only on Taeyang and the bond between them. Their opponent was a massive alien with 4 arms, riding a warhorse bred for desert combat. The creature had armored scales and looked like it could run through walls. The starting horn blared. The alien charged immediately, trying to use superior size and power to overwhelm them. But Hana had learned over the past days that power meant nothing if you could not land a hit. Through the bond, she and Taeyang moved as one entity. She did not need to give commands. She thought about dodging left, and Taeyang was already moving. The enemy warhorse thundered past them, its momentum carrying it several meters beyond its target. They danced around their opponent, wearing it down, waiting for an opening. The armored warhorse was strong but not quick. Its rider grew frustrated, making mistakes. When the opening came, Taeyang struck. Not a powerful blow, but a precise one. He swept his body against the enemy warhorse's legs at just the right angle. The heavier creature lost balance and stumbled. Its rider, unprepared for the fall, tumbled from the saddle. Victory. The crowd's roar shook the arena. Hana and Taeyang advanced to the semi-finals. Their next match was harder. The opponent was a veteran rider with decades of experience, mounted on a war horse that had won tournaments before. The fight lasted longer, testing Hana's endurance and Taeyang's speed. But in the end, intelligence and coordination won over experience. They advanced again, so did Minho, so did Jiwon. 3 teams remained. The judges announced that Minho and Jiwon would fight first, with the winner facing Hana in the final match. Hana watched from the preparation area as Minho entered the arena. His black warhorse looked tired but ready. Across from him, Jiwon sat perfectly straight on her silver warhorse, her face showing no emotion. The fight began, and immediately something was wrong. Jiwon's warhorse moved with unnatural speed, faster than should be possible even for a warhorse. Its eyes gleamed with a wild light that did not look healthy. Minho fought well, but his tired mount could not match that explosive energy. Within minutes, Minho was down. His warhorse had tried to dodge but moved a fraction too slow. Jiwan's mount hit it with tremendous force, sending Minho flying from the saddle. The crowd cheered, but Hana felt sick. Through her bond with Taiyang, she could sense something from Jiwan's warhorse. It was in pain. Terrible burning pain that was being suppressed by chemicals. Minho limped from the arena supporting his injured warhorse. As he passed Hana, he whispered, "Something is wrong with her mount. Be careful." The final match was announced. Hana versus Jiwan for the championship. They faced each other across the arena. Jiwan looked at Hana with cold contempt. "This is where your little story ends, maintenance girl. You have had a good run, but now you face real power." Hana said nothing. She just held on to Taiyang's neck, drawing strength from their bond. The horn sounded. Jiwan attacked with ferocious speed. Her silver warhorse moved like lightning, and only Taiyang's superior agility saved them from the first charge. Hana felt the wind of the enemies passing. They could not fight power with power. They had to be smarter. Through the bond, Hana analyzed Jiwan's pattern. The attacks were fast but predictable, following textbook tactics. Jiwan was relying on her mount's chemically enhanced speed to overwhelm opponents before they could react. But Hana and Taiyang did not need time to react. They moved together, thinking as one. They dodged, weaved, and retreated, making Jiwan chase them. The crowd booed, wanting to see a real fight, but Hana did not care about the crowd. She cared about survival. Jiwan's warhorse was breathing hard now, foam appearing at its mouth. The chemicals driving it forward were burning through its body. But Jiwan pushed harder, using spurs to force more speed. Hana felt anger rise through the bond. Taiyang was not just fighting for victory anymore. He was fighting for every warhorse that had been abused, every creature that had been broken and discarded. The next time Jiwan charged, they did not dodge. Instead, Taiyang waited until the last possible moment, then pivoted with impossible precision. Jiwan's warhorse, moving too fast to adjust, stumbled. Taiyang did not strike the enemy mount. Instead, he positioned himself perfectly, and when Jiwan's warhorse tried to recover, it found Taiyang in exactly the wrong place. The silver warhorse crashed into Taiyang's shoulder at an angle that sent Jiwan flying from her saddle. The crowd went silent. Jiwan hit the ground hard. Judges rushed forward to check on her. She was conscious but injured. Victory should have been declared. But then Jiwan's warhorse collapsed. Medical teams surrounded the silver creature. Scanners revealed what Hana had suspected. The warhorse had been drugged with combat enhancers, illegal chemicals that increased speed and aggression but destroyed the body from the inside. The crowd's mood shifted from excitement to anger. Cheating in the trials was not just against the rules. It was an insult to every honorable competitor. Judges conferred quickly. Their announcement echoed across the arena. Team Jiwan is disqualified for use of illegal enhancements. Medical teams will attempt to save the warhorse, but preliminary scans show extensive internal damage. Hana felt tears on her face. Not tears of joy for winning, but tears of rage for what had been done to Jiwan's mount. That warhorse had not chosen to be drugged. It had been a victim too. The lead judge approached Hana and Taiyang. "By process of elimination and by right of combat, I declare you the winners of this year's Frontier Trials. Hana and Taiyang are crowned Apex Riders." The crowd roared, but this time it was genuine appreciation. They had witnessed something special. A human girl and a rejected warhorse had defeated the galaxy's best through courage, intelligence, and an unbreakable bond. Minho approached, limping but smiling. "I told you that you were special. Both of you." Over the next hours, officials tried to offer Hana everything. A military contract worth millions of credits, a position training warhorses for the Federation, fame and fortune beyond anything she had imagined. Hana turned them all down. "I am not a soldier," she said simply, "and Taiyang is not a weapon." Instead, she made a different proposal. She would take the prize money and use it to buy the abandoned cargo bay where she first trained Taiyang. She would turn it into a sanctuary for failed warhorses, creatures that did not fit the military's brutal standards. She would prove that there was another way, that warhorses did not need to be broken to be great. That partnership built on trust was stronger than obedience built on fear. The officials were confused but agreed. Hana suspected they thought she would fail, that the sanctuary would collapse within a year. But they did not understand what she and Taeyang had proven. Strength came in many forms. 6 months later, Hana stood in her sanctuary, watching a dozen rescued warhorses exploring their new home. Some were injured, some were traumatized. All had been declared worthless by military standards. Taeyang stood beside her, no longer a reject but a legend. His bloodline was now in demand, with breeders offering fortunes for his offspring. But Hana refused to sell him as a stud. He was not property, he was family. Through their bond, she felt his contentment. For the first time in his life, Taeyang was truly home. A new transport arrived, carrying 3 more rejected warhorses that had been scheduled for termination. Hana walked out to meet them, Taeyang following faithfully at her side. The new arrivals were scared, broken just like Taeyang had been. But Hana saw what others missed. She saw potential. She saw the future. "It is okay," she told them softly. The same words she had spoken to Taeyang so long ago. "I see you," and she did. She saw them all. Every rejected, discarded, broken creature that the galaxy had given up on. She would give them what someone had once given her, after her world fell apart. A second chance. The twin suns set over Korgath Prime, painting the sky in colors that almost made the hostile planet look beautiful. In the sanctuary, warhorses that the galaxy called worthless played together, slowly learning that they were safe. Hana leaned against Taeyang, feeling his heart beat through the bond. They had come so far together, from that terrible auction house to championship victory. But the real victory was not the title or the fame. The real victory was proving that compassion was not weakness, that the strongest bonds were built on trust, not domination, that sometimes the greatest warriors were the ones the world overlooked. Taeyang nickered softly and pressed his nose against her shoulder. Through the bond, she felt his simple message, not words but pure emotion. "Thank you for seeing me." Hana smiled and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Thank you for believing in me." Together, the maintenance girl and the warhorse everyone called worthless watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Their story was not ending. It was just beginning. And somewhere in the galaxy, in the vast auction houses where creatures were bought and sold like property, perhaps other rejects dreamed of finding their own Hana, their own person who would look past the surface and see what truly mattered. Hope was a powerful thing. It could transform the broken into legends. It could turn failure into victory. It could prove that sometimes the weakest link becomes the strongest chain. Hana and Taeyang had proven that to the galaxy. Now they would spend their lives helping others learn the same lesson. The stars shone brighter as if the universe itself approved. And in the sanctuary, rescued warhorses slept peacefully, dreaming of better tomorrows.